Hi guys, this is Tech Howdy. I welcome you to this video tutorial on creating an ASP.NET Core 2.2 application with Angular 7. And in this video tutorial, we will be creating our controllers, that is to register and log in our users into our application. So before we start creating our controllers, just to make sure you all have already created the required application DB context class and the required database tables that we need. If you haven't, please go ahead and watch the previous video tutorial. And in this video tutorial, we are going to create our account controller, which will contain few API methods. One of the API methods is the register API method. The second one would be the login method, and the third will be the confirm email method. So we will create these three methods. So let's go ahead and first right click on our controller and add a new file, and then go to ASP.NET Core, and we are going to choose our web API controller class. Let's call this as account controller. Click new, and we should have an account controller class created with some default action methods, but we don't need these methods, so I'm just going to get rid of all these methods since we are going to write our custom methods. Next thing that we want to do is go ahead and create few properties or few objects that we would need in order to use using dependency injection. So the two services that we need to inject is UserManager and SignInManager. These are two core services of identity framework. One, UserManager, the second one, SignInManager. We need to inject both these services into our controller. With this injected into a controller, we can now call the appropriate APIs when we need to create a user or sign in a user. We can also validate the user's details, like if his email is confirmed, if he has an authorization token, and so on, using these two services. Now, in order to initialize these services, we have to create a constructor for a controller and then have to initialize these services. So let's go ahead and do that. Since we want to use these services in our controller using dependency injection, we want to make sure that there is a service that is active that can supply us these required services in our controller. And to do that, we will go to our startup class, and here we will create that service where we will tell our ASP.NET Core application that we are using identity framework to manage our users. So let's go ahead and do that. We have added this service in our startup class and specified that we are going to use identity framework, and that whenever we require the service where we want to validate a user using dependency injection, we can now use that service because it would be supplied to us by our startup class. Now what we want to do is we want to validate the users. On what basis are we going to validate the user? We need to supply some options, and if those options, the criteria has been met, that means that our user is valid. And if it's not, that means it's an invalid request being made by a user. So let's go ahead and configure that options. So now we have added the following options under the services add identity. And whenever we want to validate the user using these services, we will use these following options. These options are based on this project's requirement. If you want to, you can change these options based on your project requirements. The options that I have used is when a user registers in this application, we will make sure that the password contains a digit. The length of the password has at least 6 characters. identity password has one alphanumeric, non-alphanumeric characters, so I've set it to true, and so on. If you have any other options, you can add them here, and if you want to modify any options, you can do that modification over here as well. So we are done with adding the options. The next step is to go back to our account controller class and create our action method. The first action method that we are going to create is the register method that will help us to register new users in our application using these following options. And to do that, we will create a new method called as register, but we will do that in the next video tutorial, and we will dedicate the next video tutorial only to code our registration method. So please like and subscribe our channel Tech Howdy. Thank you for watching.